Hi students, Assalamu alaikum. As you know that we are doing a poem that is My Mother at 66 currently. And today we'll read this poem. We'll do a reading of this poem. And we have already discussed the poet and her poetic style. And we have discussed, I have given you the introduction of the poem as well. And before starting this poem, before reading this poem, I would like to give you the summary of this poem. What is in the poem? See, as far as the summary of this poem is concerned, I will tell you the summary of this poem, and after that, we'll start reading this poem. See, this is a touching poem written by Kamala Das, who wrote under the pen name of Madhavi Kuti. As you know, that it was her pen name under which she wrote many of his writings. And in this poem, she describes her feelings of love and attachment towards her aging mother. So, this poem is based on the relationship between mother and daughter. And once the poet went to visit her mother, she was on her way back to the airport to return to Cochin. She looked at her mother, who was seated beside her in the car. Her mother had dozed off to sleep, and her aging face was smoky in color like a ash. Her mouth was open, and she resembled a dead body. The poet realized that her mother was old. She felt pain and sympathy for her. Her mother needed love, affection, and care. But she was old, and this fear in the daughter made her worrisome, and she thought that her mother is going to leave her very soon. Now, in order to come out of the gloom, the poet shifted her glance and looked out of the car's window. There she saw young trees, she saw little children who were running out of their houses into the playgrounds, and these things made a contrast between the aging face of her mother and the children full of energy, full of life, and full of happiness. As they reached the airport and the poet was about to leave for the aeroplane, she glanced at her mother once more, and her mother appeared weak and pale, just like the moon in the winter season, which seems to have lost all its strength. So this is again simile, and she looks as if she's a late winter's moon which has no energy, no life. The poet felt the pain and fear of losing her mother. She was reminded of her childhood when she used to fear losing her mother. So this fear of losing her mother, this made her very worried, and she was in utter chaos. She was in melancholy. As a child, she could not bear to be separated from her mother even for a few months. Now the loss would be permanent, and as her mother was about to die, and she would lose her forever. The poet did not express her feelings. She smiled and said, "See you soon, Amma," because she wanted that her mother should live and they could meet again. So, this is what the summary of this poem is. Now, we will start the reading of the poem. See, first I'll read this poem, then we'll come back and we'll discuss it line by line. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doors open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes, but after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her wan pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma," All I did was smile and smile and smile. See, this is a very short poem and it is filled with these emotions, personal feelings of the poet as far as her mother is concerned, regarding her mother. All these feelings are regarding her mother. See, we'll start the poem now. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning. See, the poet is on her way to the Cochin airport when her old mother sitting beside her. She looks at her closely and presents before us her image. So she's presenting before us the image of her old mother. She's telling us that driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning. So she's talking about last Friday morning when she was driving to the Cochin airport with her mother sitting beside her. I saw my mother beside me, doors open mouthed, her face like that of a corpse. And now she's looking at her mother. She's closely observing her mother, who is beside her, and she's observing her. And what she's observing, that her mouth, she's doze, her open mouth. She has this open mouth, and her face ashen like that of a corpse, so we have this simile here. So when the poet is on her way to the Cochin airport with her old mother staying beside her, she's looking at her closely, and she's giving us details about her mother. She she tells us that her mother is she's doze, she's open mouthed, and she her face ashen like that of a corpse. So doze means she's in a light sleep, and open mouthed means her mouth is open. She's sleeping, or with her mouth open. So that is what she's telling us, that this was the image of her mother. She's showing us, she's portraying an image of her mother before, for the reader, for the audience, and she's telling us that her mother, who was beside her, she was sleeping, and while sleeping, her mouth was open, and when she observed her face ashen like that of a corpse. And here simile has been used. Simile is a comparison. It is a direct comparison between two dissimilar things, two unlike things. It is a poetic device which is used to compare two unlike things, dissimilar things. It is also called as direct comparison. And in this simile, we compare two things that are dissimilar to one another, unlike one another, and we make use of words such as like or as, such as like and as. And here, see, her face ashen like that of a corpse. This like has been used here. So this is a simile. And her face, the face of the mother, the poet's mother's face, is compared to a corpse. The face of her mother is compared to the face of a corpse. That is how this simile has been used here. And this poet, she compares her mother with a corpse. She compares her mother's face with that of a corpse. And as she looks at her mother's pale face, she is struck with horror and pain of losing her. And from that very moment, she is in a deep distress. She is in a deep stress of losing her mother. She is in pain. She is struck with horror. She is in pain that she is going to lose her mother. She is going to lose her mother, because the mother with the dozing face and open mouth is compared to a corpus. So she's in that position. She's in that position that her daughter is readily comparing her to a corpus, as she's dozed, she's open mouthed, and her face ashen like that of a corpus. Here we can find that the poet shows the typical love and affection which is present in a mother daughter relationship. So all these things, all these observation which she finds in her mother, that shows the love and affection of a relation that is present in a daughter and mother. And realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away and looked at young trees sprinting. And now the poet is pained and shifts her attention outside the car in order to drive out the negative feelings. See, she finds herself in such a situation where she observes, where she looks deeply into the face of her mother, into the face of her mother, and she finds that her mother is as old as she looked. So she's old, and she looks old as well, she looks old as well. But what she did, that is important. The poet who is in pain, she shifts her attention outside the car in order to drive out the negative feelings. So that is she put that thought away and looked at out at young trees sprinting and merry children spilling out of their homes. One second. Out of their homes, but that after airport security checkup, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her, wan pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache. So another simile has been used. See where we were. So put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting and merry children spilling out of their homes. Sprinting means running, and spilling means moving, falling, or flowing. That is simply children spill, children move out of their houses, etc. See, the poet who is in pain, and she now tries to shift her attention and to drive out the negative feelings out of her, and she changes this sad mood, she changes this sad mood. The scene outside the window is of growing life, young life and energy, that is of young life, fresh life, growing life and energy, because they are children, and beside her there is this old lady who is her mother. This the rapidly sprinting trees alongside the merry playing children symbolize life, youth and vitality, and the poet here is reminded of her own childhood when her mother had been young, whereas now she is encircled with the fear of losing her, and that has made her insecure. So all these things, all this comparison between her mother and the world outside the window, the world in which these young children are, the young children who are playing and who are merrily doing things, this made this poet of ours, this made this poet, she is feeling insecure now, because she knew that they symbolize life, youth and vitality, they symbolize freshness, they symbolize this energy. These children symbolize energy, but this mother, she symbolizes approaching death, and she's going to die, and these children, they are going to live, they are full of energy, and that her mother is going to die now, and this made her insecure. The losing of her mother, the fear of losing her mother, that made her insecure. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. And now, when there is this security checkup, when she's at the airport, to take flight, and it indicates departure and separation, which creates melancholy, which creates sadness. As she bids goodbye to her mother, the image of the old worn out mother in the twilight of years strikes again. This she is very sensitive daughter. She's taking details out of her mother's face. See, but after the airport security checkup, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. Wan, pale as a late winter's moon. Wan, pale as a late winter's moon. And she finds her mother is wan. She's colorless. She's pale. She's colorless, and she's without any energy. And she looked at her again, and she compares her mother with that of a late winter's moon. See, as the word as is used here, so this is a comparison. The word as is used here, and she compares her mother with that of a late winter's moon, and this is another simile used in the poem, where she compares her mother with that of a late winter's moon. That late winter's moon, why? Because the late winter's moon, that is colorless, that is without energy, that is without shine. And same is the case with her mother. She's without energy, she's at the deathbed, she's death is approaching, and she's about to die. So that is why she compares her mother with that of with the late winter's moon. And then, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said, see you soon, Amma. This is very important. This is very important. See, she bids farewell to her mother. And keeping her hope of seeing her again alive. She says, see you soon, Amma. See you soon, Amma. She hides her sorrow, as she does not want to create a painful environment for her mother. She doesn't want to let her mother know the emotions she has inside her, and conveys her that as she's enjoying her life, similarly her mother should also be happy and enjoy her life. But she has this fear. See, here we have been told that, and that old familiar ache, my mother's childhood fear, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, see you soon, Amma. And all I did was smile and smile. So she smiles for her mother. And she bids him goodbye. As well. But she had this familiar ache. She had this pain inside her. She had this childhood's fear. Childhood fear means when her mother was temporarily away from her. She was feeling very much worrying. She was feeling very much stressed. And now she's permanently going to leave the poet. And this is a pain which she is unable to bear, which she is unable to take. And that is what fear she has. The childhood's fear was that she was for a moment, temporarily, she was going to live without her mother, when her mother was away, when she had to do something. And now this childhood's fear, that was going to be permanent now. And that hit him on the hit her on the heart, and that made him very much painful, as far as the separation of her and her mother is concerned. See, the poet is feeling the pain of the separation. She is feeling the pain of the separation, leaving her mother and going, and also her childhood fear of losing her mother, which she feels that earlier was temporary. It was temporary when she was a child, and the childhood fear of losing her mother, that was temporary. But now it could be forever, as she could die of old age. And it is haunting the poet. It is haunting the poet, because she was fearing that child. She was fearing that temporary this separation. Now this separation is going to be permanent, and that is what is haunting the poet. And she is so pained that it is natural for her to cry. It is natural for her to cry. But keeping a brave friend, she hides her tears and smiles, because she knew that I am not going to create a painful environment for my mother, because now I want to give her confidence, because she's going to separate from me and I'm going to separate from her. So that is all about this poem. That was the reading of this poem. And we will do another reading. Another reading we'll do of this poem. That will not be a reading like this. We'll discuss the literary devices used in the poem, and we will discuss the critical appreciation of this poem. We will do the critical appreciation of this poem first in the next reading. In the next video lecture, I'll be discussing the techniques used in the poem, the poetic devices used in the poem, with examples from the poem, and after that we'll be discussing the critical appreciation of this poem, and we'll see how we can analyze this poem. So this was simply the surface reading. Where this surface reading, yes, we'll be doing the critical reading of this poem as well in the next video lecture. Thank you. Have a nice day.